When I got my first full-time teaching job, I kind of stopped doing everything that made me, me. I stopped reading, I stopped writing, I stopped watching movies. I just put away everything that I had cultivated and all these interests I have developed over the course of my entire life, and I shelved that to become a better teacher. And it burnt me out. My mental health took a dive. I couldn't really focus on anything. I couldn't really focus on reading. I had stopped everything. And I tried to read. I tried to pick up a few books here and there, and nothing ever really stuck. I found myself kind of burning out really quickly, and I didn't know why. And it actually wasn't until when I recently got COVID a month ago that I was able to breathe, take some time to myself, recover my mental health, and really start diving back into the books that I love. So I went out and bought one book that I've been very interested in for a while, and then I read two more books on my shelves that I have had sitting there for months that have been just eyeing me up, and I've been waiting and waiting to read them, and I finally did. And I just want to share with you guys the books and why I love them and why they matter to me so much. The three books that I read over the past month that really got me back into reading, they rebuilt my reading confidence, is these three. The first one is Ruth Hall, A Domestic Tale of the Present Time by Fanny Fern. The second one is Yukio Mishima's Confessions of a Mask. And the third one, and I can't believe I actually read this one, I just have the epilogue left, but I'm like 30 pages away from finishing it, is Thomas Pynchon's V. I'm just as shocked as you guys that I was actually able to almost get through the entirety of a Pynchon novel. Again, I have like 40 pages left, or 40 pages left, but I'm like there. I did it. I got through a Pynchon novel. I can't really say that I understood everything, but we'll get to that one. These three books all kind of address an area of interest that I have in literature myself, which is like this very like reflective, meditative novel. It's outside of V, I guess in some areas, but really like self-reflective, really kind of like pondering a lot of like the manifestations of life and ideologies and people's places in society. These novels all surprisingly feel very similar to me, and I wonder if when I'm trying to find myself and my place in society, I found myself gravitating to these books of characters who are lost and are looking for something and looking for an identity and looking for their role or their purpose in life. And I really don't think it's a coincidence that these books have had just the biggest impact on me. The first one I want to talk about is Fanny Fern's Ruth Hall, A Present Tale of the Domestic Time. I feel like a lot of you guys have read this book, and if you have, please just let me know what you think about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But as you can see, I just ate this book up. I devoured it. I took it slow, but there were parts where I just couldn't put the book down. I was so transfixed with the world and the roles of women in the society. If you've never heard of this book, I'm assuming most of you guys have. I don't really have to think I have to summarize it, but this Ruth Hall, A Domestic Tale of the Present Time, is basically the real-life story of the author, Fanny Fern, but with some kind of like fictitious details. I think it's called A Roman a la Clef. I'm probably butchering that. I'm really sorry, but I actually found this book for $2. It says $2 right there. A few months back when Drunzo and Matt's Bookshelf and I went to a bookstore in Boston, Massachusetts, and I was just kind of wandering the shelves, and I found this Penguin Classics here. And I remember picking it up and reading the back and going like, oh, the death of her first child and her beloved husband and a bitter estrangement from a family, basically a woman having to take charge of her finances and her career and her life in a world of domesticity. Domesticity? I think that's how you pronounce it. In a world of domesticity where no one is supporting her, where she has to find a role for herself. And from like the very first page, I was like, this book is made for my interest in that, because I think I've talked about it a lot. I really love how books can analyze so concretely how society can just demonize the role of women and just place them on this lower pedestal, and how the literature of women reflects this like constant sadness and constant like desire to be more, but our society, our patriarchal society, is so hell-bent on pushing them down for gender is fucking bananas. And it is so interesting to read a story that highlights and focuses on the economic elements of like widowhood. I don't know if that's a word, but being a widow in a society that doesn't support you. Ruth Hall goes through hell and back trying to support and feed her kids, and ultimately takes up the profession of being an anonymous writer who just blows up in popularity and becomes one of the most talked about and sought after authors in the entire country. It is a fascinating, like, rags to riches but empowerment story where basically this one woman character is told, you can't do it, you can't be anything, and she does, and it's fascinating. I was transfixed with how modern this felt, and I really can't put my finger on it. There were moments of men insulting Ruth Hall and her work and her ability to be a mother and her ability to be a writer that felt like it was taken from like social media, where like anonymous guys will like rip on successful women, and it was just transfixing to read. I was just flipping through the pages like nonstop. I was cracking up. I've never laughed at a book as much as this. It's intentionally funny. It recognizes the absurdity of the treatment of women in this book and in the world at the time. And I gotta be honest, I don't really think I can do this book any justice. I really think the only way to show you how amazing this book is, because me rambling about, oh, it's so great, is not going to, it can't, it's impossible to put into words how amazing this book is. So I just wanted to read a passage for you guys, and it's not a spoiler, and it's little bit longer, but I just wanted to read this, one, because it's one of the hardest I've ever laughed at a book, and two, I think it perfectly captures everything that I'm talking about with the modernity of the novel and how it's just aged gracefully. So the context of this is Ruth Hall is now a writer, and she's receiving feedback or kind of like public comments about her work. Miss or Mrs. or Madame Floy, I suppose by this time you have become so inflated that the honest truth would rather be unpalatable to you. Nevertheless, I am going to send you a few plain words. The rest of the world flatters you. I shall do no such thing. You have written tolerably, all things considered, but you violate all established rules of composition and are as lawless and erratic as a comet. You may startle and dazzle, but you are fit only to throw people out of their orbits. Now and then there's a gleam of something like reason in your writings, but for the most part, they are unmitigated trash, false in sentiment, unrhetorical in expression. In short, were you my daughter, which I think a good providence you are not, I should box your ears and keep you on a bread and water diet till you improved. That you can do better, if you will, I am very sure, and that is why I take the pains to find fault and tell you what none of your fawning friends will. You are not a genius. No, madam, not by many removes. Shakespeare was a genius. Milton was a genius. The author of History of the Dark Ages, which has reached its 15th edition, was a genius. You may not know you have now the honor of being addressed by him. No, madam, you are not a genius, nor have I yet seen a just criticism of your writings. They are all either overpraised or overabused. You have a certain sort of talent, and that talent, I grant you, is peculiar. But a genius, no, Miss or Madame Floy, you do not approach genius, though I am not without a hope that, if you are not spoiled by injudicious, sycophantic admirers, you may yet produce something credible. Although I candidly confess that is my opinion, and that the female mind is incapable of producing anything which may be strictly termed literature. Your honest friend, William Stearns, professor of Greek, Hebrew, and mathematics in Hopetown College, and author of The History of Dark Ages. I mean, what else is there to say? That is just an incredible piece of writing, and I really feel like it's something that she absolutely got, Fanny Fern, in terms of her writing. I mean, the focus on the himself, William Stearns, in his writing, and adding himself into Shakespeare and John Milton, being like, that guy, he's a genius, is just the funniest thing ever. And to just basically throw down this woman and be like, oh, I would put you on a bread and water diet and the female mind can never comprehend literature, is just amazing. There is such an amazing satirical element to this that it's the entire book is like this. And if you love like criticisms of women's literature like this, and you love the focus on how society will just focus on pushing down women as much as they can, Ruth Hall, Domestic Tale of the Present Time, if you haven't read it, is exactly the book that I would recommend. It just means so much to me. I could see myself rereading this 100 times in my life and laughing at each single moment. I love this book more than anything. If I could like wipe my mind and read it again, I wouldn't a heartbeat. Oh, I had so much fun with this. And I found this for $2 on like a random shelf in a bookstore. That's the best find. That just makes me so happy to find this kind of stuff. I love it. The next book I have is Yukio Mishima's Confessions of a Mask, which I am very interested about. I don't really feel like I fully understand it. Yukio Mishima is clearly an incredible literary mind. I frankly had never even really heard of him. His name has been something that has been mentioned before, but I've never really dived deep into him until I watched Paul Schrader's movie Mishima: Life in 4 Chapters without any context and was just kind of blown away by who this guy is. And so after watching that, I did some research on him, found that he was like a prolific author, and was like, cool, I'm going to buy a bunch of his books. but they were really hard and expensive to buy. So I was like, oh crap. So like a year later, I'm at a bookstore in Santa Monica, California here, and I see like a new version of this book along with like two other of his used books. I was like, holy crap, I have to buy these. So I scoop them all up and I go home and I start reading this, and I was like blown away. I don't really even know how to describe this book in a certain regard. It's his second book, and it feels the most personal out of everything I've read about this. I've read one other of his novels, and this one just feels like a direct idea of who he is. And if you want an insight into this man, it feels like we should start here, but I have to be honest, I don't really know. There's a lot here that clearly went over my head, and when I talk about my other book, V, that's kind of like a trend with this too. But it's a story of like, I love coming of age stories more than anything. Some of my favorite movies are coming of age stories, and this one is the oddest one I've ever read. It is so focused on masculinity and homosexuality, and our main character being gay in a hyper-masculine, hyper-war focused Japan in the early to mid 20th century, and how he has to suppress that, and how he almost views himself in masculinity, and how this ultimately kind of alters his understanding of who he is, and how this almost alters his understanding of the world around him. It's like a heartbreaking journey of someone trying to constantly suppress their identity, and how they manifest that in the oddest ways possible. I don't really know if this is similar to a Roman clef like Fanny Fern and Ruth Hall Domestic Time, but there are elements of this where our character is like turned on by the idea of violence and masculinity and death. And there's a lot of like very graphic scenes of the character like masturbating to graphic images and violence. And it's described in such vivid detail that it's almost like a train car. You can't look away. And as someone who loves coming of age stories and loves the idea of like, oh, what society does to the psyche of a person and the coldness that society can have for someone who's deemed different, all comes together in this perfect melding of this book. And I just found myself mesmerized word to word. And it's another one of those books that I can't do this justice. I can only just say, if you've read this, please tell me more. Which other ones of his books I should buy and read? I'm hooked. I want to read everything he's ever published. I'm so fascinated by this man, and I know he has his issues, but there is something so heartbreakingly sad in the writing of this that it constantly feels like the outlet for the author. And I haven't really read that in a long time, where it feels so personal and like the author needs this book to be himself. So the only way I think I could do this is just read one of the passages that really stood out to me and let you guys make that decision. I had one friend at the university with whom I was on familiar terms. His family owned a long-established confectioner's shop. At first glance, he appeared to be an uninteresting, diligent student. The cynical tone of voice he used towards people in life, together with the fact that he had a frail build similar to mine, aroused a sympathetic attraction in me. But while my cynicism came from a desire for creating an impression and for self-defense, the same attitude in him seemed to be rooted in some firmer feeling of self-confidence. I wondered where he got this confidence. After a time, he guessed that I was still a virgin, and speaking with a mixture of overwhelming superiority and self-contempt, confessed that he had been visiting brothels. Then he sounded out my feelings on the subject. I mean, that's probably not the best passage, admittedly, but I think that might give a taste as to the self-reflective element, the sheer honesty and willingness to be open with the readers and to be open with this invisible audience that this author may not have been aware is present. I mean, I don't know about how much about writers and their psyche, but the fact that he could be writing this and nearly 100 years later, I'm sitting here talking about it is just what I love about this kind of stuff. I am kind of interested to see where else his kind of writing goes. I've read Spring Snow, and I was kind of a little mixed on it. I recognize the beauty in the language, but if he has any more of this stuff, if you guys could recommend anything else, I would love that. Or any other really similar books. I just love doing this kind of stuff. I just love reading. It's so much fun, and this is just everything that I love about reading in literature. And this just feels like the peak of what I want in the genre that I like, in the mixtures of ideas that I love. The last book is none other than Thomas Pynchon's V. It's his first novel. It came out in either the 1950s or 1960s, and I don't know why I read this. I don't understand this book. I'm just gonna throw this out there. I understood maybe 15% of it, and that might be generous. I don't know what any of this means. I am so confused at the larger ideas of the story. Things just weave together in the most seamless way possible. I cannot describe it. Characters just appear with each other, and it's just transfixing. If anyone could tell me anything about this book, I would just love that. I've tried reading a bunch about it, and it made me even more confused. This is my first Pynchon novel. He's always been someone with a reputation of being one of the most arduous and difficult authors of the 21st century, and I've always heard about him. I tried reading Inherent Vice when I was like 16. I made it 5 pages and was like, I don't get it. This makes no sense to me. And I quit, and I never read him again until I was like, I want to tackle this because I want to get to Gravity's Rainbow. I want to try that one day. I might try it this year, frankly. And what better place to start than reading V and then maybe crying of Lot 49 and then just diving right into Gravity's Rainbow? That might be a mistake, and frankly, I'm not expected or prepared to know anything about those books. But with V, this is the ultimate book for helping me get back into reading. I feel like such a better reader having tackled this, even though I didn't understand it. I think it's really just because Pynchon's writing like dragged me across the finish line. It takes a while to get used to, but you feel Pynchon's like influence in his recognition that you don't understand what's going on, and just slowly bring you up to speed with the way he structures grammar, with the way he structures sentence, with the way he introduces characters and settings. It just feels like a sheer mastery of the craft, which is incredibly hyperbolic considering I've read maybe 0.00001% of all books written, and that's super like high. But out of the books I've read, this is by far the best written one ever. I've never seen such a mastery of this craft and a mastery of the written word. And if you are interested at all of getting into Pynchon, first off, please help me. I need help. I don't get it. But also just like, it feels like a perfect place to start. I feel like I've just been exposed to like a trial by fire. I feel like I just got like hit in the gut and I just kept going. As you can see, like this isn't just like, it's just a lot, and I loved it, and I had so much fun reading, and I'm not even done. I have 30 pages left. I just don't even know how to like process this. And again, similar to the other books, I just want to read a passage. This will be no spoilers, and this might not make any sense because his writing is so tied together. It feels like one perfectly like a sandwich. I don't know, like a perfect bow, and taking something out of context won't really do it justice at all. But it might give an indication on how he writes if you haven't read any Thomas Pynchon, but if you have, again, please, like, just tell me. Of their dash across the continent in a stolen Renault, profanes one night sojourn in a jail near Genoa, where the police mistook him for an American gangster. The drunk they all threw, which began in Liguria and lasted well past Naples. The dropped transmission of the outskirts of that city, and the week they spent waiting its repairs in a ruined villa on Ischia, inhabited by friends of Stenzel. A monk long defrocked named Fenice, who spent his time breeding giant scorpions in marble cages, once used by the Roman blood to punish their young boy and girl concubines, and the poet Kingo Glossa, who had the misfortune to be both homosexual and epileptic, wandering listlessly in an unreasonable heat among vistas of marble fractured by earthquakes, pines blasted by lightning, sea wrinkled by a dying mistral, of their arrival in Sicily and the difficulty with local bandits on a mountain road, from which Stenzel extricated them by telling foul Sicilian jokes and giving them whiskey, of the day-long trip from Syracuse to Valletta and on the La Ferla steamer Star of the Malta, during which Stenzel lost $100 in a pair of cufflinks at stud poker to a mild-faced clergyman who called himself Robin Pettipoint, and of Paola's steadfast silence through it all. There was little for any of them to remember. Malta alone drew them a clenched fist around a yo-yo string. Can anyone tell me what that means? Like, I am just like, what does that mean? I don't get it. I'm so confused. I just don't understand it. But it feels like it wrapped me around my finger. It just like drew me in. I couldn't stop. There is one chapter in this book with like a character I believe comes back in Gravity's Rainbow. That's like 60-something pages. It's chapter 9, Mondigan's story. I don't understand it. I don't know the point of it. I don't know why it's there, but it is some of the best writing I've ever seen. It's a fever dream of worlds colliding and crashing and characters brought down to like a primal instinct. And I literally could not put the book down. I was like sick on an airplane as turbulence was going, and I was still just reading it, fighting through it. I did not want to stop, but like, come on, this is just something else. I don't even know how to describe it. I just loved this more than anything. And the beauty of it to me is at the center of it is like characters looking for something, like an identity or someone, a person, V, and it feels longing and sad and melancholic and like it's looking for something. And I just found myself so engaged by it, and I didn't even know where to continue or where to go or how to even process this book, but I loved it. I loved it so much. So yeah, these books got me back into reading. I'm so excited to continue and just diving into books and seeing what else is out there and really, really kind of building my abilities as a reader. And I have a long, long way to go. I still have to process these books and still kind of keep going and dive down this Thomas Pynchon journey, this Confessions of a Mass journey, and getting even more into women's literature. I love this. I had so much fun reading these books, and it feels really, really good to be back and to be engaged in literature again. I really, really enjoyed these. And if you've read these and can give me any advice on these two books, Confessions of a Mask and Thomas Pynchon's V, please tell me. I need help. And if you have any recommendations, please let me know too. So that brings us to the end of the video. These are all the books that I've read recently, and I just wanted to talk about them because I just really love them and they really connected with me. So first off, I hit 2,000 subscribers, so thank you so much. That means the world to me. It's really nauseating to think that there's many people watching, but just thank you. It's very humbling, and you guys have made me a better reader, so thank you. And if you haven't checked out my friends Drunzo and Matt's Bookshelves already, please go check them out. Let them know. Matt's Bookshelf had this great video about his bookshelf, and Mark actually came back and made another video, which people are loving, and I love seeing him happy and making videos again. So just again, I hope this video made some sense and wasn't just me rambling. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you again soon.